It's not what you think it is. Most men chase attraction with words, with looks, with effort that feels obvious, but what truly stays in a mature woman's mind happens in the quiet, almost invisible moments of touch. The kind she feels long after you've walked away. The kind that lingers under her skin and makes her wonder why you feel different from everyone else. Because when a woman has lived, loved, and learned, her body no longer responds to surface-level gestures. It responds to intention, to presence, to touches that communicate something deeper than desire. Something that feels like understanding without a single word being spoken. And once you understand this, everything changes in the way she sees you, in the way she feels you, in the way she slowly, almost uncontrollably, begins to open herself emotionally in ways she doesn't do easily anymore. There is a quiet power in slowing down your energy around her, especially in a world where everything feels rushed and impatient. And one of the first ways this shows up is in how you initiate physical connection, not in a way that seeks a reaction, but in a way that offers calm, grounded presence. Like when your hand gently rests on her back for just a moment longer than expected, not pressing, not claiming, just existing there with a subtle confidence that says you are comfortable being close without needing anything in return. And that single moment, if done with awareness, begins to melt the invisible walls she has built over years of experience. Because mature women are not impressed by intensity alone. They are moved by control, by restraint. By a man who understands that anticipation often creates more emotional electricity than immediate gratification ever could. And then there is the kind of touch that feels like reassurance rather than pursuit, something many men completely overlook. Like when you lightly hold her hand not to lead her somewhere, but simply to connect, to create a moment where she feels seen and acknowledged. And it's not about gripping tightly or trying to dominate the moment. It's about softness with intention, a quiet steadiness that communicates emotional safety. Because for a woman who has experienced inconsistency, mixed signals, or emotional unpredictability, what becomes deeply attractive is not just chemistry, but reliability felt through subtle physical cues. And when your touch carries that message, it begins to build something far more powerful than attraction. It builds trust, and trust is what transforms interest into emotional attachment. There is also something incredibly magnetic about a touch that happens without announcement, without performance. Like brushing a strand of her hair back slowly while maintaining a calm, grounded presence. Not rushing the moment, not turning it into something exaggerated, just allowing it to be natural and effortless. And in that small gesture, what she feels is not just physical contact, but attentiveness, awareness, the sense that you notice details others overlook. And that awareness creates a kind of intimacy that words can rarely achieve. Because it shows her that you are not distracted, that when you are with her, you are fully there. And that level of presence is something she will begin to crave without even realizing it. As connection deepens, the energy behind your touch becomes even more important than the touch itself, because mature women are highly sensitive to intention. They can feel when a man is trying to get something, versus when he is simply sharing a moment. And one of the most powerful ways to create emotional attraction is through a touch that lingers just enough to be felt, but not enough to feel overwhelming. Like a gentle squeeze on her shoulder during a conversation, a brief, warm contact that says you are engaged, that you are connected, that you are not just hearing her, but feeling the moment with her. And these micro moments begin to stack in her mind, creating a quiet emotional narrative where you start to stand out without trying too hard. There is also a deeper layer that most men never reach, and that is the ability to create comfort through stillness, through a touch that doesn't move, doesn't rush, doesn't seek validation, like sitting beside her and allowing your arm to rest naturally close. Letting the proximity itself build tension, letting her become aware of your presence without forcing interaction. And this kind of restraint creates curiosity. It invites her into the moment instead of pulling her into it. And when she leans in, even slightly, that is when the connection begins to shift from something external to something internal. Something she starts to feel within herself. What makes all of this so powerful is that mature women are not easily impressed by grand gestures or rehearsed charm. They have seen those things before. What they respond to is authenticity expressed through subtlety, through touches that feel uncalculated yet intentional at the same time, touches that don't demand attention but naturally draw it. And when your presence carries that quiet confidence, your physical connection stops being just physical. It becomes emotional, psychological, something that resonates deeper than surface-level attraction. And as these moments continue, something interesting begins to happen. She starts to associate your presence with a certain feeling, a calm excitement, a grounded anticipation, a sense that being around you feels different, and that difference is what slowly pulls her in, not through force, not through pressure, but through a natural emotional pull that builds over time, because true attraction at this level is not created in a single moment. It is layered, it is built, it is felt gradually until one day she realizes that what she feels for you is not just interest. It is something deeper, something more meaningful, something that she cannot easily explain, but cannot ignore either. As that emotional tension builds quietly beneath the surface, something even more powerful begins to unfold, and it has very little to do with how often you touch her, but everything to do with when and why you do it. Because a mature woman is constantly reading the space between actions. She is sensing whether your presence is consistent or conditional, and one of the most deeply attractive experiences for her is when your touch feels aligned with the moment rather than imposed on it. Like when she's speaking about something meaningful and you gently place your hand over hers for just a second, not to interrupt, not to redirect, but to silently say that you are with her in that exact emotional space. And that kind of synchronization creates a connection that goes beyond physical awareness. It becomes something she feels emotionally anchored to. There is also an undeniable depth in the kind of touch that communicates protection without possession. Something subtle yet incredibly impactful, like guiding her lightly through a crowded space with a soft hand at the small of her back. Not gripping, not directing forcefully, just offering a quiet sense of direction and presence. And what makes this so powerful is not the act itself, but the feeling it creates. A feeling of being cared for without being controlled, which is something mature women deeply appreciate because they value independence, but are drawn to moments where they can feel safe without having to ask for it. And when your touch delivers that balance, it begins to create a kind of emotional trust that words alone cannot establish. At a deeper level, There is something profoundly intimate about understanding when not to touch, and this is where most men lose the emotional connection they could have built. Because restraint, when genuine, amplifies desire. It creates space for her to lean in, emotionally and physically, and when she does, even in the smallest ways, like moving slightly closer to you during a conversation, or allowing her hand to rest near yours without pulling away, those are signals that the connection is becoming mutual, that the energy is no longer one-sided. And when you respond to those moments with patience rather than urgency, you reinforce a sense of emotional safety that allows attraction to deepen naturally instead of being forced. Another layer that often goes unnoticed is the emotional memory created by unexpected gentleness, the kind that catches her off guard in the best way, like when your hand briefly cups her cheek during a quiet moment, not dramatically, not with intensity, but with a softness that feels sincere. And in that instant, what she experiences is not just affection, but vulnerability, a glimpse into your emotional depth. And mature women are incredibly drawn to that because they are not just looking for connection on the surface, they are drawn to authenticity, to moments where a man's guard is lowered just enough to reveal something real, something human, something that feels safe to reciprocate. And then there is the energy of consistency, which transforms individual moments into something meaningful over time. Because a single thoughtful touch can create curiosity, but repeated moments of genuine, intentional connection create emotional attachment. And this is where your presence begins to feel familiar to her in a way that is comforting rather than predictable. Like a quiet rhythm she starts to recognize. And within that rhythm, your touch becomes something she anticipates, not because it is routine, but because it is aligned with how she feels when she is around you. And that anticipation is where emotional attraction starts to evolve into something deeper. There is also a certain magnetism in touches that carry a sense of appreciation rather than desire. Moments where your physical connection feels like acknowledgement rather than pursuit, like a gentle squeeze of her hand after she shares something personal, or a brief, warm contact on her arm when she laughs. And what these moments communicate is that you are not just attracted to her physically, but that you value her presence, her personality, her energy. And for a mature woman, that distinction is incredibly important, because she has likely experienced attention that felt shallow or transactional. And when your touch carries genuine appreciation, it begins to set you apart in a way that feels rare. As all of this unfolds, something subtle but powerful begins to shift inside her. She starts to associate your presence with emotional ease, with a sense of being understood without needing to explain herself constantly. And this is where attraction becomes something she feels internally, rather than something she evaluates externally. It becomes instinctive, almost subconscious. And this is why the smallest touches, when done with awareness and intention, can create the deepest impact, because they bypass logic and connect directly with emotion. And perhaps the most overlooked aspect of all is the way your touch ends, because the final moment of contact often leaves the strongest impression. And when you release slowly, naturally, without abruptness or hesitation, it creates a lingering sensation that stays with her, not just physically, but emotionally, like a quiet echo of the moment you shared. And that echo is what keeps you on her mind long after you're no longer physically present. because it leaves her with a feeling rather than just a memory. By now, what you may begin to realize is that none of this is about technique in the traditional sense. It is about awareness, about emotional intelligence expressed through physical presence, about understanding that attraction at this level is not created through force or repetition, but through alignment, timing, and intention. And when all of these elements come together naturally, your touch becomes something far more powerful than a simple gesture. It becomes a language she can feel, even when no words are spoken. And as everything begins to settle into a deeper rhythm between you and her, what truly defines the strength of the connection is no longer the individual moments, but the emotional continuity you create through them. Because by this point, she is no longer just noticing your touch. She is feeling the intention behind it. She is sensing the consistency in your presence. And this is where attraction transforms into something far more lasting. Something that begins to live in her thoughts, even when you are not there. Because every subtle interaction you have shared has built an emotional imprint that feels both exciting and safe at the same time. And that combination is rare enough to become unforgettable. There is a quiet intensity in the kind of touch that reflects emotional understanding, especially in moments when she is not at her most composed, when she is thinking deeply, or slightly distant, or even vulnerable in ways she does not openly express. And this is where a simple, grounded gesture, like placing your hand gently over hers without interrupting her space, can create an almost unspoken reassurance that she does not have to perform or pretend around you. And what makes this so impactful is that it allows her to feel accepted in her natural state, not just when she is at her best. And for a mature woman, that level of emotional acceptance is one of the strongest forms of attraction she can experience. As the connection deepens further, there is also something incredibly powerful about the way your presence adapts without losing its authenticity. Because she begins to notice that your touch is not repetitive or mechanical. It evolves with the moment. Sometimes playful, sometimes calm, sometimes deeply reassuring. And this adaptability creates a sense of emotional intelligence that feels both engaging and real, because it shows that you are not following a script. You are responding to her, to the energy between you, to the subtle shifts in mood and atmosphere that most people overlook. And this awareness is what allows your connection to feel alive rather than predictable. There is also a profound sense of intimacy. In the moments where nothing needs to be said at all, where your touch becomes a quiet language that exists between you, like sitting close together and allowing your hand to rest naturally against hers without drawing attention to it, letting the simplicity of the moment carry its own weight. And in that stillness, what she feels is not just comfort, but connection. A sense that being with you does not require effort, that it flows naturally. And that kind of ease is something she will begin to value more than any grand gesture or dramatic expression. And perhaps one of the most defining elements of all is the respect embedded within your touch, the unspoken understanding that every moment of physical connection is mutual, is welcomed, is shared rather than taken. Because when a woman feels that her space, her comfort, and her emotional boundaries are honored without her needing to voice them, it creates a level of trust that is incredibly difficult to break. And within that trust, attraction does not just grow, it stabilizes, it deepens, It becomes something that feels secure rather than uncertain. As all of these layers come together, something almost inevitable begins to happen. She starts to lower the emotional barriers she has carefully built over time, not because she is trying to, but because she feels safe enough to do so. And when that happens, her responses to you become more natural, more open, more emotionally present. And this is where the connection shifts into something truly meaningful, something that goes beyond attraction and begins to feel like understanding, like alignment, like two people existing in the same emotional space without needing to force it. And what makes this entire process so powerful is that it is not driven by intensity alone, but by balance, by the ability to create moments of closeness without overwhelming, to express interest without pressure, to maintain presence without losing individuality. And when you carry that balance consistently, your touch becomes something she associates with emotional clarity rather than confusion. And that clarity is what allows her to fully experience what she feels without hesitation. In the end, what you begin to understand is that deep emotional attraction is never about how much you do, but about how deeply you connect within the moments you share. It is about the quality of your presence, the sincerity of your intention, and the awareness you bring into even the smallest gestures. Because those are the things that stay with her. Those are the things that create a lasting impression. Those are the things that slowly but powerfully draw her closer to you over time. And when everything aligns, when your touch, your presence, and your intention all move together naturally, what you create is not just attraction, but an experience. Something she feels rather than analyzes. Something she remembers not because she tries to, but because it left an emotional mark. And that is the difference between temporary interest and something that truly stays. Something that grows quietly but deeply. Something that becomes impossible to ignore. This is the quiet truth most people never fully understand. That the deepest connections are not built through force or performance, but through presence, awareness, and the ability to make another person feel seen, safe, and understood without needing to say it out loud. And when you embody that, your touch becomes more than just physical. It becomes meaningful, memorable, and deeply attractive in a way that lasts far beyond the moment itself, tying everything together into a connection that feels both natural and unforgettable.